What's up guys, it's Austin with Pickleball Playbook. Today we're going to be talking about when we drive versus when we drop on the fourth shot. So stay tuned. To start, I'm going to share 4 different tips with you specifically about drives so that you know whether it's a good decision or not to hit a drive on that third shot. So starting with tip number 1, it has to do with the return. And a lot of the time what I hear from players is that if the ball is short, we should hit away on the ball. We should drive that ball. But that doesn't always hold true. And here's why. Whenever the ball is hit above mid-court, it can either be low or it can be high. So if the ball is low and we end up hitting a drive on that ball, we can only hit high. We can only hit upward because it's below the level of the net. So it makes it extremely difficult for us to be able to hit an aggressive shot because chances are we're going to hit that ball long or directly to the strike zone of our opponents, which is going to be around shoulder height. It's going to be pretty dang hard to hit a drive with enough control to be able to somehow get it to our opponent's feet or around there. I don't even think it's possible. That would be more so a drop because you'd have to hit it with enough softness to be able to be hitting a drop. So if the ball is low and short, that's not an opportunity to drive. But if the ball is high and short, that's when we would want to drive. And the reason for that is the trajectory again, because if the ball is above the height of the net or even equal with the height of the net, it's a great opportunity to drive because we can hit it over the net and be able to place it at our opponent's feet. Hopefully they're a little bit further back so that we can get it to their feet. But even if they are up at the net and we can get it kind of low on their body, the only way that that's going to be possible is if the ball is high. Okay, so tip number 2 on when to drive has to do with the returner again, but more specifically where the returner is standing. So if we, some of the time, we'll hit a really good serve. It depends on the player, right? But I know for me, it's like 1 in 5 where I'm going to hit a fantastic serve and be able to keep my opponent back, right? And so in that moment, when I know that I have kept them back or that I have made it so that they're late coming in, it's a great opportunity to drive the ball. So now I know, okay, yep, they haven't made it past mid-court. That's a really good measurement to use. They haven't made it past mid-court. Drive and run to the net, get as close as you can to the kitchen and be ready to pounce on the ball because chances are they're going to pop it up. So the next thing that we need to focus on with this tip is as the guy is coming in or the girl is coming in late, we need to make sure that we're hitting the correct location. So they obviously have a partner that's up on the net, and if they're good, they're going to put some pressure on you and kind of cover the middle of the court. And a rule of thumb that I like to use, and it's something that I always used in tennis, is I would always burn them down the line the very first point of the game. So if I'm serving, or even the very first game of the series or whatever, is I'll burn them down the line a couple of times and then they know to cover their line. So what it means to burn them down the line, in case you don't know that terminology, is just like how it sounds. I'm gonna hit up the line. I'm gonna hit my drive up the line. And then let's say I hit a winner. Obviously they're gonna know, okay, I was way too far over. I'm not gonna cover or I'm not gonna poach for my partner. I'll know to cover that line because, hey, this guy can hit up the line. So then after you've burned them up the line once, the problem's literally solved. So then you don't have to worry about their partner poaching because they know that if they start to sneak over there or try to trick you, that you're gonna burn them up the line. So then it comes down to the location of the next ball that you're gonna hit. So as they're coming in late, the best possible spot to hit them is at their feet. And the reason for that is because their feet are moving forward in that moment. And so it puts them off balance and you're gonna get a pop-up. So the third situation that we would wanna hit a drive rather than a drop would be when our opponent hits crazy spin on us, particularly underspin, and it's coming deep and staying low. And the reason for this is because the ball that they're hitting is spinning in this direction towards us. So if we're over there, it's spinning in this direction backwards. And so when we hit it, it's already spinning backwards, so we come over the ball, right, and hit it, it's gonna go instantly into the net. So if we end up dropping that ball, we're gonna see that we're gonna hit a lot of drops into the net. It's a way more difficult shot to drop. But if we drive that ball and aim high, it gives us a way greater opportunity of setting up a good 5th shot drop. Rather than maybe if we aim too high with a drop, it's gonna be a lob and they slam it. But if we aim a little bit too high with a drive, chances are, like I said before, they're gonna hit the ball and then we'll have a great opportunity to hit a good 5th shot. So just remember that your goal with this is to make yourself less uncomfortable by driving that first shot so that you can get a nice 5th shot, because you're putting a ton of pace at them. And let's say they're already at the net, you're putting a ton of pace on them at the net. All they can do is block the ball because you hit them in a good low position right? Or at least around waist height. You're not obviously hitting up here like how you would get with a drop, maybe because they have so much spin on it. It puts you in a good position for a good fifth shot. So this brings us to the fourth reason that we would want to drive rather than drop. And it comes down to if our opponents are stacking. And if you don't know what stacking is, it's where your opponents maybe feel more comfortable on one side than the other. A great example of this is Ben Johns and Colin Johns, the number 1 and 2 doubles players in the world. What they do is Ben always plays on the odd side of the court or the left side of the court, and Colin always plays on the right side of the court or the even side of the court. But since they're doing that, they have to return sometimes on the odd side. Like Colin sometimes has to return on the odd side, so they'll switch sides after they hit that return. And so if your opponents are doing this and they're switching sides, it's a great opportunity to hit a drive because they're not in position yet and they're going to be late coming up. So now what we're going to talk about is when we should be dropping rather than driving. So the first reason that we should be dropping rather than driving is when our opponent hits a return that is short and low. And the reason for that I've explained before is because if the ball is low, we can only hit up from there. So we should hit a drop that we can hit up and then try and potentially get it at our opponent's feet if we hit our drop good enough. Since this ball is so low, it's going to be extremely difficult for us to be able to hit a drive on it and keep our drive out of the net, or be able to keep our drive out of the strike zone of our opponents. So the second reason that we would want to hit a drop rather than a drive is when our opponents are both up at the net. So obviously when they're returning, one opponent is already up at the net, and then the other opponent has returned the ball, has run up to the net, and let's say that they hit even a short return and it's super high, right? So they've had time to come up to the net. So they're at the non-volley zone, both of them. It's not going to be the best idea to hit a drive on that ball because both of them are there and ready closer to the net, and they have a better downward trajectory at your feet if you're hitting that drive at mid-court. So it is a better idea and a better plan to just hit a drop on that shot majority of the time. That being said, this isn't true all the time because you always want to be changing things up, right? And so all the tips that I've gone over with you guys so far, make sure that you don't follow them 100%, but you should majority of the time if you want to win more points. So the third situation in which you would want to hit a drop rather than a drive is when our opponents hit a really, really good return. Let's say it's really high and deep. It's a really good idea to drop that ball so long as we can keep the ball out in front of us. So let's say they hit it high and deep and we're running over to get the ball. It would be a better opportunity if the ball gets behind us to drive and hit with as much topspin as we can to just stay in the point. Because if we try to drop that ball and the ball's behind us, chances are it's going to be a lob, points over. But if you can drive it, you can set yourself up a lot of the times for a better fifth shot. So with this tip, I've received lots of questions on Instagram about what to do if the ball is hit deep, right? If the returns hit deep, and the decision-making process on if you're going to hit a drive or a drop. And it really doesn't come down to like a one-size-fits-all, right? What I would say it comes down to is what you're more comfortable doing. What are you better at? So for me, I'm a lot better even on my back foot. If I'm leaning back and I barely get to a ball, it makes way more sense for me personally to hit a drive and try and keep it low over the net and get it back to my opponents to then hit a fifth shot. But for some people, they're more comfortable hitting a drop on that shot. So the ball comes in super deep and high, they're going to come in and hit a drop. So I don't want to say to someone out there that maybe doesn't have the best drives to, hey, if it's high and deep, drive the ball, because that's what I do. What I would say is do what's best for you and do what you're most consistent at. And then after that, it just comes down to repetition, right? Because the more that you hit that, the more that your muscle memory will be like, oh, this is what I do in this situation. This is what I do with a deep return. This is where I excel. This is my strong suit. So on a deep return, I'm going to drive the shot. Or on a deep return, I'm always going to drop the shot. Now I say always, but remember, it's very dependent upon your specific game. So change it up. You always want to be changing things up. But majority of the time, you want to do what is best for you, what you're best at. So the fourth strategy that I like to use to be able to figure out whether or not to hit a drop or a drive greatly depends on my opponents. So if I know that my opponents love a drive, if they love hitting back a drive. Let's say that they're big college tennis players. They've just come into pickleball. They have extremely quick hands and they love receiving a drive. I'm going to drop to them 99% of the time because that's what they're going to be uncomfortable with. So I'm playing to their weakness. And then on the other hand, there are people that would prefer to not be driven at. So then it's like, okay, yeah, you want to hit drives to them. But it really just comes down to playing to your opponent's weakness. Will be able to help you guys decide between hitting a drop or a drive. So a lot of the time what I'll do is I will be watching my opponents warm up together and figure out who has a harder time countering drives and who has a harder time countering drops, who's making more misses in those situations. And then I'll form a game plan with my partner and be like, okay, we're going to hit to this guy or this girl when we're hitting drives, and we're going to hit to this guy or this girl when we're hitting drops. And if you guys do that, you'll obviously have a lot more greater success with not only your decision-making process, but with winning actual points. So just a little side note, make sure that in rec games, you are hitting those shots to the better player or the better counterer so that you can improve your own game, because that's the only way that you can go up levels. Alrighty, now that you guys know when to drop and when to drive, be sure to subscribe. It really helps me out. If this video has brought any value to you guys at all and you're watching this right now, make sure that you subscribe. And if you guys don't want to subscribe and this video absolutely sucked, I totally understand. And then also, if you have any questions, just leave them in the comments below. The last video that I did had tons of questions, and I was going through there answering all of them the best that I could. Any future video content that you guys want to hear about, questions that you have about any stroke, anything about pickleball, I am happy to help. Yeah, last thing is just subscribe. Just do it. Peace.